Without question, LeBron James is the single greatest player we've seen in the NBA since at least Michael Jordan, and you'd have a decent argument for putting him above even MJ with 9 straight finals appearances, 3 titles, and 4 MVP awards. But we all know it was impossible for him to accomplish these impressive accolades without good teammates. Well, at least the finals appearances weren't happening without him. Case in point, look at his teams during his first run in Cleveland. Who was his best teammate then? Mo Williams? Zydrunas Ilgauskas? Okay, they did make it to 1 finals, with LeBron playing 45 minutes a game in the playoffs, but when you look at his whole body of work, you've got to sympathize with him when there's an argument that either Wally Szczerbiak or Carlos Boozer were the best teammate he had playing alongside the first 7 years of his career. Which made me wonder, who is LeBron's best teammate he's ever had? I think it comes down to 4 players: Kyrie Irving, Dwyane Wade, Kevin Love, and Chris Bosh. These 2 pairs were instrumental in helping James win titles, and without question, they were at the height of their powers the season before joining forces with LeBron in Cleveland and Miami. So let's look at each of their 4 seasons preceding the LeBron experience to see who truly was the best player LeBron has played alongside. First up is Kevin Love. He might be the most forgotten of the 4 since his most dominant version in Minnesota was crazy good. Let's start off with his low post game. By 2014, he had chiseled his body like a statue, able to muscle his way to the rim by sheer strength, but combine that with impeccable footwork and touch. He could use either hand to finish and had a variety of moves and counters. His shooting also opened up opportunities, as he could face up in the post and draw his defender close because you simply couldn't give him any space from that close to the basket for a quick jumper. But what truly made Love's game transcendent was his ability to stretch the floor from distance. My favorite play was pinch post action out of Adelman's offense. Never before had we seen someone fake this handoff, then step back behind the 3-point line to nail jumpers. This action is already really hard to defend when the cutter comes around Love looking for the ball back, but now defenses had to deal with the threat of the long ball, and Love was simply awesome at it. Add to that his ability to get behind the line at any time in their offense, and now teams that wanted to defend him with a rugged big man down low to stop the post-ups couldn't deal with him flashing outside to stick the jumper. If that weren't enough, he was also a rebounding vacuum on both ends of the floor without having to get off the ground very high. He knew how to leverage his strength to command space and had that knack for being in the right place at the right time. To top it off, let's not forget all his fantastic outlet passes. With incredible wrist strength, he could easily snap 70-foot passes right on the money to help generate layups for teammates, even after their opponent made the shot. We hadn't seen someone throw these kinds of passes since Love family friend Wes Unseld was doing similar things in the 70s. Now let's look at Dwyane Wade. Coming into the 09-10 season, Wade was in the midst of a dominant 6-year run that had direct comparisons to Michael Jordan. He had won a title and a Finals MVP, and certainly was the most decorated of all of LeBron's teammates to be. He was best in the pick and roll, blurring the lines between point guard and shooting guard, and he had a real knack for splitting the defenders when they tried to hedge against it. It was startling to see how easy and often he'd get right to the rim to either detonate a bomb or finish strong through contact with explosiveness and body control. Let's not forget about his Euro step that allowed him to expertly elude the secondary defender and finish softly off the glass at tough angles. And to keep the defense honest, he was an elite mid-range shooter off the bounce. Michael never ran pick and roll as often as Wade, and if you're wondering how either of these guys would do just starting out in the league now, well, here's your answer. While the mid-range now is a 4-letter word, he was a knockdown shooter from anywhere inside 20 feet, and it didn't stop him from scoring in the high 20s every single night. Now, when the Heat needed a bucket, they always had the isolation of Wade out top to generate shots. He could create a bucket in any manner imaginable inside the three-point line. With the ball on a string and his raw power and explosiveness, there wasn't a defender that could handle him one-on-one. It was these moves that cemented him as a top 5 player in the league during this stretch of his career. In the open court was where we got a ton of highlights from him, as he was one of the fastest players in the NBA, both with and without the ball, and his teammates weren't shy about finding him for alley-oops. His freight train attacks put the kind of fear into the defense reserved for only about 4 or 5 players in the league, and his defense was able to trigger quite a lot of these forays to the rim. He was active with great hands and routinely averaged in the area of 2 steals per game during this stretch of his career, wreaking havoc on both ends of the floor and driving opponent coaches crazy. To make matters worse for the defense, Wade was terrific at attacking off of screens, and Miami's offense wasn't shy about finding ways to get him into this action. Curling off these pin downs was a no-win situation for his man. If he got into the lane, it was over. But he was also one of the best off-ball cutters in the league too, finding the holes in the defense from the weak side so teammates could hit him for easy buckets time and time again. It's been a number of years since Dwyane Wade was playing in his prime, and since he retired, it's easy to forget how good he was. And it's just as easy to forget all your different passwords, logins, and credit card payment details with so many different websites and platforms out there. But Dashlane is the LeBron James of making your digital life simpler and safer, meaning they're the GOATs at managing your passwords, autofilling your personal payment info, dark web monitoring, and VPN for safe, private browsing. Dashlane works across all your devices, will generate strong, complex passwords for every account you own, and allows you to store encrypted files like scans of passports or contracts, so you always have important documents accessible and secure. I'm going to set you up like a beautiful LeBron pass by getting you Dashlane for free on your first device, desktop or mobile, by heading to dashlane.com/bball. So click on the link in the description below and let our sponsor Dashlane create an online environment for you that's safe and secure, just like Kyrie Irving's handle, who made it seem like the ball was on a string the year before LeBron returned to Cleveland. While his stats might be the least impressive of the 4, considering he was only 21 and in his 3rd year in the NBA, it's no less impressive. He was given the keys to the kingdom on a bad team, allowed full reign to run the offense as he saw fit, and while it didn't make for a very efficient stat line, he was a serious problem for the defense. All the skills we saw later that were instrumental in leading the Cavs to a title alongside LeBron were on full display this season, as he operated out of the pick and roll with a kind of poise rarely seen at this age. It didn't seem to matter if he ended up with 2 defenders on him off a pick and roll. His finishing ability at the rim is among the very best in the world, with some of the most creative shots you'll see, using any angle and spin to his advantage. And considering he's maybe 6'2", to get these shots off inside against NBA length and height is spectacular. He didn't shoot a ton of three-pointers this season, and he hit a respectable 36% of them, but he was enough of a threat from back there to stretch the defense out to guard him, which would then open up drives to the basket with his impressive array of dribbling combos. He'd also isolate like a grizzled veteran and make defenders look foolish. It was clear to me that he was good enough to be a top player on a title team if surrounded by better talent. And time and again, he proved this with his elite finishing game, pull-up jumpers from the mid-range, plus stretching the defense from beyond the arc. As far as his passing goes, he's never had what we consider incredible vision. He makes the right pass that presents itself in front of him, and has managed the incredible pressure he puts on the defense himself to then find the openings to dump passes off and make the simple right play. It's the reason he's never been a high assist guy, but it hasn't been detrimental to the offense as a whole. On the contrary, the hint of a threat of a pass is just what he needs to continue impressing us with his great play. And that brings us to the last player on the list, Chris Bosh. Playing in Toronto in 2009 meant that you were about as under the radar as possible, so I don't blame you if you had forgotten or maybe never really knew just how good Bosh was in that pre-LeBron season. From the right block, he was simply devastating as a low-post player. If Kevin Love used brute force, Bosh leveraged length, quickness and core strength to simply get around and over you every chance he could. Much of his post-game came from his ability to face up and shoot the basketball, putting a tremendous amount of pressure on the defense considering how close to the hoop he began his moves. He didn't have to back his man down with excessive physicality because he had a lethal jump hook with either hand that no one could block. Plus, facing up allowed him to use the dribble to attack, and that's where we got most of his highlights, as his man was powerless to keep him away from the front of the rim as he combined rip-throughs, hesitations, and ball fakes into a whirling dervish of offensive capability. He loved that right block, which put the threat of a left-handed drive to the middle square in his defender's mind, and he could use that to go baseline for highlights. Just watching these moves makes me a little upset, knowing he had to abandon this part of his game in order to play alongside LeBron in Miami. It's unclear why that had to happen. They easily could have given him 5 or 6 post-ups a game with the Heat, but instead he was relegated to spotting up. He also attacked from the high post, which leads me to think he'd still be incredible if he played today, working out of pistol action and pinch post. Again, his ability as an elite shooter from inside 22 feet made this area particularly troublesome for the defense, and he could demonstrate even more ball handling and body control skill to get into an array of spins and fakes to find an easy mid-range shot. When the Raptors needed the basket, they went to him for isolations, and the offense did a nice job to get him moving to the spot for an opening before he'd go to work. He didn't always need to get into the lane since his jump shot was that good, and elevating from 15 feet without a hand in his face is as good a shot as you can get short of a dunk or a layup. He was also crazy good as a roll man. More reason to believe he'd be great in today's game as well, where he could handle the ball and make good decisions, mainly to get open shots and knock down buckets for days. While coaches may shield their eyes at the long twos he'd take out of the offense, make no mistake, these were good shots for him and ones he made with good efficiency, which just made him that much more of a varied scorer from both inside and out. And we saw at the end of his career that stretching this to the three-point line wasn't hard, and it's just too bad his coaches didn't get him behind that line earlier. And because of that outside threat, it enabled him to be a dribble drive artist as well, utilizing the shot fake to get him into the lane where he could attack fearlessly, find the seams, and finish strong. When all is said and done, no individual player is good enough to win titles all on their own. They all need lots and lots of help from teammates, and LeBron James certainly needed help at various times from many of them in order to capture that elusive Larry O'Brien trophy. But if we had to choose which player was his best teammate, independent of the huge sacrifices made in order to play alongside him, with a gun to my head, I think I'd pick Chris Bosh. Considering the incredible defense he displayed in Miami, this was as much an X factor as anything on that team, plus the inside-outside skill he possessed. It makes me single Bosh out. Of course, the easy answer would be Dwyane Wade, but you can't sleep on the other two, especially Kevin Love, who wasn't just a decent player on some bad teams. He was a monster with loads of talent who sacrificed the most playing with LeBron. But I know I'm as anxious as you are to see if Anthony Davis will end up topping this list once this season is over. Or will he have to sacrifice his individual brilliance to play in the shadow of LeBron? And will that make the Lakers the best team possible?
We got new people here for Dr. What is it? Dr. Tuesday! Dr. Tuesday!